Hey neighbors, the handyman here with Initiative Coffee Company along with totally average height Jake Del Maro, and today we're talking about DDEX-02-15, The Black Heart of Vengeance. Writer John Rossamagno, editors Claire Hoffman, Chris Tulach, and Travis Woodall. This is a 4-hour mod for 2-2 play, tuned for 5 8th level characters. Party is asked to find the source of a new frequency of powerful seismic activity. The module features another classic Season 2 investigation and a capstone combat. Part 1, an introduction. Blade Cora Pater and eventually High Blade Rending Talon Groshin lore task the party with finding the source of seismic activity plaguing the Pater holdings and revenue streams. Many of the Pater family lumber assets have been swallowed up by sinkholes or damaged by earthquakes. The party is set to the task discreetly. We start off with not a combat here, which is unusual for Season 2. We start with kind of a role-playing opportunity. Once again, we meet the brand new Highblade Lore, who replaced the former Highblade Umadolphin, who replaced several Highblades before them. It's pretty straightforward, part 1. Anything to consider here, Jake?
This silence should be enough. No,
All right.
so no. But real talk though, I do like the beginning of this pod, because it shows what a paid army looks like. I say that because there's very specific descriptions as you're getting into the tower, where there's like, this is where the blades live.
Mm-hmm.
Blades are important people. I think there's like 8 or 13 of them, and they've got the high blade on top of that. And as you get closer and closer to any one of these certain areas, the library changes on them.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's what they're going to use, library, whatever, or the colors will change on them. So if you're closer to this area, it could be green, yellow, or red, blue, or something like that. And that to me is a really neat aspect that we never really considered, because we always see the soldiers and they're just out being in Mole Master colors. These guys are like a private army for each one of these blades, which is really neat. Everything is very organized.
It gives you the feeling, it gives you the feeling that the colors are reflective of where they come from rather than the organization they're a part of.
Also, I just don't. I'll be honest. I don't like high turnover. It looks bad for a company. But like that to me seems like a massive issue. You spent all of last mod. If these are the same players, and it's like we just spent 4 out of game hours or in game or out of game hours just putting this guy back into power,
and he's already been removed from power
with a guy that only got mentioned once.
Yeah.
That happened in last mod, and the only time it was mentioned was because he's part of the audience.
Yeah.
Of the end of the duel.
Yeah.
So I don't like it. I'll be honest, I do not like it. Change. I am in high vote for changing it.
Sure.
Because why do we need to change this person's name again? Like, you're adding another person. You're desyncing your party.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only reason you would is to establish how tenuous things are in Bowmaster, right? Like, the reason you change out the Highblade again is to establish that it's a dangerous position, that people don't last long in the position, like...
But why? If that's the case, then why is that happening?
Yeah.
Like, that would be a mod I would love to explore.
Right.
Why are people just...
Uma Dolphin spent 1,000 years waiting to be Highblade again for 2 days.
What can we maybe dissect what's happening in their upper guard situation where it's kill seize stab, it's what's going on in the Mole Master uppers that is just causing that to happen. I don't like it. I think it's disruptive to play.
It would be one thing if it was explained better in the mods, if there was some sort of purpose, but it's just not mentioned. Like, the fact that it's a new Highblade every module isn't even brought up in any of the modules. It's just something you realize as you read through a 5th name for the Highblade.
And on top of that, this guy is he's the leader of the Hawks too.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't know. Unless this is I'll actually admit this as a DM. This section is very unclear because it makes reference that he is the High Blade, and then he's also the leader of the Hawks, but doesn't like separate or combine them together.
Sure.
So this might be just me complaining about something that might not actually exist.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, how it's read and how I, prep this stuff, there's been no clear either separation or a combination of the two things. And it just leads me to believe that this is just grammar was an issue.
Yeah.
But I don't want to harp on that stuff, but I will for the fact that it causes confusion.
Sure. Yeah.
It's not like hey, this person's a male, female. It doesn't matter.
It seems trivial, but it's so difficult to keep up because it changes so frequently.
Yeah.
And it's tough to figure out if it's intentional or incidental.
Yeah.
And so I definitely see where the frustration. If it said there's a new High Blade again, it would be very clear. But the fact that it just names the High Blade and expects you to know that it's changed, indicates that it wasn't planned, right?
Well, even it goes as far as I'm just reading through some of the quotes here, is that there's mention of the High Blade suspects that Patir, and it's are we saying this guy is now just a High Blade because that's kind of how the proper noun happens here?
Right.
You kind of lose your name and you just become the High Blade,
right?
Or is it it's such a small thing, but there's no reference to Jacine from the previous one that Umadolphin killed. There's no Umadolphin.
Yeah, and it really points out that the editors here are volunteer editors, right? Nobody was getting paid to edit this mod, and you can see that because if they were, this would have been clarified, right?
Yeah.
Which I don't blame them for missing it because they're volunteer editors, right?
Yeah. I mean, this just seems like such a, and I absolutely agree. But that really speaks to the fact if you are a writer during this and you're watching this and you're like, hey, I also like writing stuff, and I know that you guys have probably been through the ringer. Don't hesitate to reach out to your friends or even us.
Yeah.
I for one love reading these things because I run so much.
Yeah.
I think during this quarantine I've been up. I'm at a table about 5 days a week online, 4 or 5 days a week. That to me is enough time where I want to spend, if I have to now play in a mod that's just what the heck's going on, and it wasn't the writer's intent, or just wording got out of hand, and not necessarily a bad way, just it's you've read it so many times it just makes sense to you, but
right. Well, you know what you're thinking when you write it down, right?
Yeah,
and
so,
it's just not the case for everybody else. So,
but back to I guess the mod itself, Aled Burrell gets brought into the limelight here.
Yeah. Famously from season 1 and some earlier stuff in season 2.
Yeah, so it's a cool kind of conflict because now you're seeing what happened since she's been brought back to life.
It also provides some opportunity for players to have to make hard decisions if they've played season 1 modules, right? And we'll kind of get to those hard decisions later on in this mod, but the callback is worth noting and pretty interesting.
Yep.
Part 2, Rubble and Revenge. Once set to task, the party investigates several locations: the ruin of Fatal's Firewood, Ardith Pater's Manor, Pater Timber, and the Hammerfeld Tree. After exploring the locations, gathering clues, and fighting off potential combats, the party will come upon Wyland Burrell at the Hammerfeld Tree. He's focusing on raising funds for the liberation and restoration of Flan, and he and his sister Aled have tapped into the cult of Black Earth to do so. So this is where we come up with a moral quandary, right? Right away. If your players have played Season 1 and gotten to know Aled Burrell and respect her as a military leader and all-around good lady in the name of Flan, very suddenly they're going to have to figure out how to deal with the fact that now she's basically a cult leader trying to bring down Mole Master.
Well, I think that's also to note, this is where if there's any sort of mod to mod coherent or just togetherness. Wyland Burrell was somebody that you guys, but that is available for convincing in 2-14 as the Temple of Timora, and that could actually what ended up happening at my table was we had a series of events that said I'm gonna go find Wyland first. They knew where he was at, one way or another, and we're like, "Yo, what's going on?" Like, your name got thrown around into this equation. What's going on here? Maybe not. Maybe less. Maybe with a little more subtlety, but like, my party kind of just addressed it, and because Aled Burrell and Wyland Burrell, they were all worked with in previous mods in this tier 2 setting. Kind of went into blind. Like, they made the necessary checks. They made a convincing argument to we should meet first, and they skipped the investigation. I mean, that was something that I want to say you should, with the correct role play, with the correct arguments, and with the understanding that they're gonna miss technically everything because, like, I wouldn't put it as the wrong way to say you can skip the investigation. I don't like doing that.
Part of that is rewarding your players for their choices, right?
Yes.
So ultimately, you run into a situation where at tier 2, it is very plausible that you have characters who have worked with Aled Burrell in the past.
Yeah.
There is a rare occurrence that maybe one of your characters used to be a member of the Dragon Cult, because that is a background available to you through the Tyranny of Dragons book. Maybe that character feels guilty about what they've done and offer a large, substantial donation to help in the restoration of Flan, at which point you can bypass a lot of the investigation part here accidentally. Other than that, I mean, like, and it goes back to rewarding player agency, right? Like, if they want to find ways to circumvent investigations, and they have the checks or the background or the sheets to back that up, go for it, right? Like, ultimately, you're at the table with other people based off what they have on their sheets. Make sure the rest of the players are fine with it. You don't want to take away a third of a module that other people are really looking forward to because one person decided to throw some money around. But ultimately, like, if you have a party that wants to get to the next section and have the resources and character background to do it, go for it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I agree with you there. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I have a very unique scenario happen at our table, but I do believe that each part of this investigation has something neat to add.
Sure.
Because you find out the Paytier family has a lumber yard, or I guess at Fatel's, who's like, the foreman's run is a Cult of the Eternal Flame, like, guy, and then they're like, we gotta get rid of this. Like, this is really convenient that this just sunk, but now we have to get rid of some evidence.
Right.
That turns into a fight, or it turns into actually a mission for one of your faction agents if you have them, or maybe you have that anyway. That's one setting. Like, that's a really cool part. Then you have Paytier's manor. Then you find that the cousin there is like, excuse my language, half-assedly looking for her brother or whomever, her family member, and it's like, Ardette, and it's like, who cares? Like, she's about to inherit like the other side of the fortune, and like doesn't really want to find him. Also, super important, read your gray boxes, because that's it kind of gives that motivation, and you realize that like Ardette was the problem for this whole whole circumstance, and people really don't like him.
It's tough because I think often you overlook the gray boxes because you're like, don't tell me how to play NPCs, but it's important here because you don't get those motivations anywhere else. Like, there's no other part of the module that says like, so and so is annoyed with Ardette because everything is his fault, right? Like, that doesn't come up, so you really have to read those gray boxes to understand where people are coming from.
But like each of these locations, I think, has a unique encounter.
For sure.
I don't think it's. I think compared to other investigations we've had, it feels less of a like checking boxes as it does like a actual experience, because each, even however small it is, we have the cults, we have, or you have one of the cults, you find info about them, you find Fedocia Patir, who doesn't care about our dead. But you get insight about who our dead is, and he actually spot on about, like, I think these people are cultists.
Yeah.
But everyone's like, oh, that's just rambling, and it's like, okay. And then the last one is like you have another gentleman just like trying to be responsible for the people that are working for the company, and they're all gone.
Yeah.
Like, they've had unique situations in each of the things. It's not, I feel like it's less blanket, like, throwing a wet blanket on a fire kind of thing. It feels like a good investigation. I do like that they've done that.
Sure.
And it's not haphazard. It feels thought out. And then that's where your natural step course ends you up at the Hammerfell tree, where it's like, if you're not with us, you're against us, and that could be a fight on its own.
Yeah.
I had a different table where one of the editors of this mod decided, or actually I wasn't running it, I was a player at the table, decided to take off his gauntlet and smack Wyland Burrell with his gauntlet, which caused I think the better term is ballroom blitz.
Sure.
And everything went wild.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's just so many ways that this could end up happening. I do like that. And it isn't entirely. I hate saying this because I'm kicking myself in my own butt, is saying that it isn't entirely reliant on the factions.
Sure.
But there are portions of this mod that
definitely
lend itself to be important. They were important parts of the faction, situation,
sure,
for reasons I can't say, or I can't tell. But like, these were important, and this was an important mod, and it was a cool mod because it was a throwback, but it also had.
Yeah, I think there's a lot in this module that's worth. It's not one that I would skip in this season.
Yeah.
Like, if you're gonna run season 2, I would definitely run this one, and we'll get kind of to why in the next section here. But it can be a little bit tough when factions don't mean anything, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, part 3, the Stone Vault. Aled Burrell and her pet Gorgons have taken up refuge deep inside a cave complex called the Stone Vault. To get there, the party will have to bypass mushroom encounters, bullet-riding cultists, as well as higher-ranking stone melders and Black Earth priests. Finally, the party meets up with Aled as she controls the Black Heart of Vengeance, a powerful and now corrupted elemental node of Earth. Aled and her Gorgons are a substantial threat to the party. There are a couple of outcomes after the encounter with Aled Burrell, depending on the success or failure or whatever else your party throws at you. I like this a lot because it really explores Aled in a new way. She goes from season 1, where she's a heroic, the last noble person on the watch, right? To now we're dealing with corruption, and is her resurrection responsible for it? Like, there's a lot of ways that you could color the entire setting here. Like, when you're resurrected, does a little bit of your soul stay behind, right? Like, are you more able to be convinced? It explores kind of like what you'll do in order to reach your goals. Like, her goal here is to revivify Flan, right? And to do that, she's destroying Mulemaster, right? Which seems to be there's a disconnect there, right? But in her mind, she sees it as viable, right? Yep. So there's a lot to explore here in terms of like what you will do to meet your goals. All you have to do is justify it in your own mind.
It's a nice little bang. It's a tough fight, and then you have I would say arguably tougher fight at the end. You have a Gorgon or 2 Gorgons plus an Aled Burrell. That's right. Mighty mad. I I want to keep our game kind of as the outlier because it was so unique happening and just things were
that's never
bold
going to
and
come up again.
it's never going to come up again. So I do believe that like if that were to happen, you've got to run by the seat of your pants. Like it's not even like something I would want to prep somebody for.
Right. Because it's not going to come up, right?
No.
Realistically, like you have to have people, you have to have the right players with the right characters who have played the right mods in the right order, like.
And even then, that was such a unique, like,
right
with all those
with
things.
enough gold on hand, right?
Yeah. That being said, there are cool puzzles in this area with like how things happen. There's we run into Gorgons. That's cool. We have things that we've never fought before.
Yeah.
I mean, also
and challenging things that Gorgons are no joke for sure.
This can be a very difficult area.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I think for DM's sake, just like maybe take a look at what's happening on the table, because if they had a bunch of fights, like it's a few days to get to the this tower or something, they can take a long rest. But even still, like there's a potential to fighting a lot of things.
Yeah.
And
I'm not
against.
Like I'm for resource checks, right?
Yeah.
I think like having a full battery of resources every time you get into combat makes combat a little stale, frankly.
Sure.
And so the idea of like,
I guess I'd just be careful because even certain like small things, getting shatter dropped on you 3 times is not fun. And there's a lot to be said about, like, I think there's less opportunities, and this might be one of the earlier opportunities where you can do this, because if you don't kill Wyland, because he actually tries to escape from, if a fight breaks out, he's going to immediately come to this place. He's a healer, and playing him as a healer is pretty neat. Use Dispel Magic, use your spells.
And it's going to infuriate your party.
Oh, right? It's like, so annoying.
Nobody in a party is excited to see someone healing the boss, right?
Yeah.
Like,
or healing minions to get another like freaking set of spells out. Like
the boss
every little
drinks
bit
a healing
counts.
potion infuriates parties all the time, or like counter spells a heal. Like it's
just
hilarious
be aware.
How
I think
infuriating it can be.
I think because there's like Black Earth cultists, you got Stone Melder, or priests, you got Stone Melders. Like,
and you've got the coolest mounted combatant in the game in Bullet Riders. Like
there's a lot of damage to be thrown out, in like not joking format. So just be aware. I'm just the Care Bear stare I have, but just be aware of what you're throwing at your party.
Just keep checked in, right? Like I think that's the value.
Like I say that because I think it'd be a disservice to your players to run into the final combat and then you had to like take down the final combat a little bit, like adjust accordingly. Like if I can't use my Gorgon that's got a 19 AC, that's a pain in the butt as it is. But they can petrify.
Or not be able to get to the final encounter. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's even worse. Like if they die at the Black Earth Priest, if that's where the party wipe is, like
Yikes. That's on you as a DM.
Like,
I hate telling you it really is on you as a DM because there's such a it's going to be tough. Like it's the end of the season. This is the end of tier 2.
It's a capstone in tier 2, yeah.
Like it is tough. And there could be 2 Gorgons and a lead who's just doing OLED things and being upset. And she also has Death Burst for whatever reason. But like, this is not an easy encounter set, but just don't beat the hell out of your people. Like do it a little bit, but like leave some of the tank.
If you're going to beat the hell out of them in the final encounter.
Yeah.
Where they've gotten to experience the whole mod. Like cutting out this final fight takes away
unacceptable.
Well, it just takes away like that feeling of catharsis of A, completing the mod, B, getting back in touch with a lead, C, like having that final real challenge, like skipping all of that because, you made poor decisions earlier is a disservice to your players, really.
So I just be careful with that, and I think that's my biggest recommendation for the mod is just be aware of party resources. If you throw a crit, just say you didn't. Like, I just, as you said, it'd be a disservice to the end, and your players, someone might die, someone could get petrified. That's part of it. You're in a stone.
Right.
You're fighting stone people. Like,
the benefit here is there are ways to deal with that now, right? Like, when season 2 was live, there were no tier 3 characters that could like spend downtime to create a restoration. You
just had a petrified character.
Yeah, you just had a petrified character, and now you're stuck, right? I guess like there was some like you could
spellcasting services, but that's still like
services, but
that
like,
was still a lot of gold.
Like, yeah, so like the benefit now is like if those things come up, you've got tier 3 characters who can spend downtime and gold to help you out. Yeah. And really, there's not much else to spend the gold on, so like, what are they out? But yeah, I don't know. It's a cool fight. It's a fight with stakes, and it's a fight that you shouldn't end up skipping because you didn't tune the rest of the combat appropriately. So there it is, DDEX-02-15, Black Heart of Vengeance. Thank you so much for listening to some advice to streamline and run it at your tables. Be a good neighbor, give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon. And from now until the next time, roll together.